Welcome back to the League Digest. This week we dive into the recently released in-depth map of Runeterra, then move on to the changes coming in patch 8.15. Next, we talk about the massive roster changes coming to Echo Fox with the first ever OCE import playing in the NALCS. Finally, we end with an announcement of a brand new game mode in League of Legends called Nexus Blitz. I'm Sushix with the League Digest. Let's talk. The universe of League of Legends is a constantly evolving project of Riot to expand on the lore of Runeterra. Although initially taking on the role of a summoner, they soon retconned the whole process of nations champions fighting to decide on political matters, the lore being much more rich now, expanded through events. More recently, they've had a heavier focus on lore updates for champions who are lacking, along with writing more stories and cinematics focusing on individuals, cleverly aligning them with both visual and kit reworks. A good example of this would be the cinematic released in 2014, A New Dawn, which featured 10 champions in teams of 5 heading against each other on the presumed rift without any particular context. This is starkly different to the Rise cinematic, which was released earlier on the 26th of July, accompanied by its own comic, expanding on his personal lore with cameos of other champions from the fields of justice such as Misfortune, Nasus, Sona, and Trundle. With more attention dedicated to detail and lore being released at a constant on the Universe website, Riot has fans begging for a Runeterra MMO to be made by the studio. Although there have been mentions and passing thoughts on the matter, it wouldn't be brought into light until their most ambitious universe release yet, the fully interactive Runeterra map, showing the vast expanse of the region in a single spot and bringing a new dimension to the region which had been only shown in two-dimensional drawings dating back to 2009. This built hype and more attention to the lore, highlighting specific regions with concept art and rich descriptions of a world ranging from the briny ports of Bilgewater to the soaring peaks of Mount Targon. Following numerous Reddit threads and tweets shared by the community, Riot Games co-founder Mark Merrill took to Twitter. This was to perhaps humour the players or actually gain genuine feedback. He wrote, "Should we build an MMO? Yay or nay?" With the universe already in existence and the interest of fans, Riot could potentially bring in new players by appealing to them with an MMO where players could fight alongside League's champions and for their favourite nations in Runeterra. It's a definite possibility for the future, however it'll be a while before anything about it is heard. There's no saying whether or not the project will pay off after the effort is put in. Here at the League Digest, we would love to explore the universe of Runeterra, but for now we'll have to keep our fingers crossed that they keep expanding on the lore and look at this for the future. So what would you guys like to see in a League of Legends MMO? Let us know in the comments down below. Moving on, patch 8.15 introduced some new changes that focus on smaller, quality of life aspects of the game. Not many champions experience huge shifts, but a few roles and playstyles will easily be more heavily favoured in this patch cycle. So without further ado, let's discuss the significant changes in patch 8.15. First, Riot made a more solid attempt at correcting the funnel strategy changes once and for all. Previously, anyone who owned an unenchanted jungle item would gain 10 less gold per minion if they had the most gold on their team. Now it's been adjusted to have the penalty against the player if they have the highest creep score on their team. This should effectively remove the funnel efficiency entirely and, more than likely, push the strategy under the rug forever. It also won't tax your jungler for performing well in the early stages of the game. Up next, Riot gave two champions significant buffs to their kit, Thresh and Fizz. Thresh gained more damage contribution on his E as well as a reduced cooldown on his W, while Fizz received damage buffs on each of his fish in his ultimate and the 3 phases of his W. Even though neither were in a bad spot before these changes, they should be solidified as strong enough picks to make both communities extremely happy with the changes. Just as relevant, Aurelia received nerfs to all of her numbers on her abilities and instead gained more scaling on her passive and more base AD and HP. As they tried before, they're shifting Aurelia's power from being a caster to being an auto-attack bruiser. In my opinion, she's moved out of mid and bot lane and put back in top lane among her other bruisers, yet she's far from the strongest of the pack. Her spot in the meta is pretty low priority, almost enough to call her just a counterpick. Another significant nerf comes to every support in the game. Riot feels as though supports can mitigate too much poke through the amount of potions they can purchase, so they tweaked pricing a bit to make trades mean more. Their starting items become 50 gold more expensive in their first form, but 50 gold cheaper in their combined upgrade costs. Overall, it'll either encourage more passive bot lanes or promote those who can successfully trade and play aggressive. Less impactful than the rest, but still pretty important, critical chance items received global changes that subtract from their early power in favor of lower prices. just so they can be built more comfortably. While the Zeal items only received price reductions, Infinity Edge and Stormrazor lost stats in exchange for price drops. This also applied to Mercurial Scimitar, so it feels better to build. However, Essence Reaver got a straight buff to 5 AD and no price changes. These should help make carries hit their spikes sooner, but they don't really help make them better options over bruisers or mages. Yasuo, however, is loving these changes. He still receives 100% crit chance for 300 gold less. Our final change to mention is rather small, but relevant enough to push the rune out of priority. Perfect timing. Back in 8.4, Stopwatch was nerfed to a 10-minute activation timer as an attempt to remove its prevalence in pro play. Since 8.10, it was reduced to 8 minutes to try and find a happy middle ground for power. Yet the same dominance still exists in pro play as it did before, so the buff was reverted and Stopwatch will not activate until 10 minutes. Really, it just lowers the power of Stopwatch meta in favor of other runes or trees. If we had to try and summarize the type of meta we may be experiencing with patch 8.15, we would take a guess and say it might be faster paced, even for traditional marksmen. Price reductions, early damage buffs, and nerfs to early safety options should promote a more proactive early game meta instead of a 40-minute slapfest. This being great for bruisers, assassins, and proactive junglers such as Lee Sin and Camille. Next up in the NALCS this week, some large developments took place in the Echo Fox roster. This likely stemming from Anero stepping down as head coach and ThinkCard taking his place. Beginning with the team's releases, Phoenix has been absent from play since Rift Rivals, and upon his removal left Demonte to be the team's sole starter in the mid lane, with the pair no longer sharing the spotlight. Although he's currently working as a free agent, he remains optimistic and enthusiastic to continue activity within the professional scene, volunteering to assist other teams in the off-season. The team's starting ADC, Ultek, was also dropped, as a combined result of his inconsistency as a player and his underperformance in the split. However, the ultimate decision was most likely related to business decisions and coaching choices in hopes of putting together a better team. Lastly, their support Adrian was also dropped in favor of Smoothie. Despite his good performance in the split, the newcomer seems to be meshing better with the new roster. There were hopes of giving him a chance to play elsewhere with a different organization, however, given short notice, all of the organization's drops were unable to secure a position on any other organization's rosters due to the short notice and lack of time, locking them out of rosters for the remainder of the split. This brings us to Echo Fox's new definitive starters. We've got Demonte in the mid lane and Smoothie and Lost in the bot lane. Following the team's shaky split and inconsistent play, these changes didn't come as that much of a surprise. Following a brief suspension as a result of toxic behavior, Demonte now plays full time as the team's starting mid laner. But the bigger changes seems to have been the roster swaps in the bot lane. OCE import Lost was promoted from the Echo Fox Academy team after a strong performance as their AD carry, his confidence serving as reassurance for the roster. In his first game, he had a standout performance on Varus, possessing strong synergy with the new support. Smoothie was picked up from Cloud9 after the organization's decision to keep Zeyzal on their main roster full-time. In terms of what he brings to the team, thus far he's shown to have overall good shot calling and playmaking. Ideal to accompany the new bot laner, extreme trust already being shown between them to create a powerful duo, and also having a flawless performance in his first game. Overall, this new roster went 1-1 in their debut week. In their first game, they were up against FlyQuest and gave an extremely good show. All players pulled their own, with the power bot lane stealing the show with an extremely strong performance. Smoothie and Lost both finishing with perfect KDA along with Demonte. The team had a clean execution from draft until the Nexus exploded, having a convincing win in the shortest game of the week at 25 minutes and 55 seconds. Moving on to their game against C9. Although starting off the game strong with First Blood and Dardoch's lead on Rengar, they possessed a strong hold on the early game, also picking up Rift Herald. However, they were unable to maintain it against the high damage comp surrounding Jensen's Orianna, putting up a strong fight but ultimately coming to a loss at 36 minutes after Lost, Smoothie and Huni were all picked off. Despite only going 1-1 this week, they showed extreme promise with the new roster, with Lost and Smoothie proving to be a lethal combination in the bot lane and Demonte only dying once over the 2 games. Dardoch also proved himself once more, gaining early jungle leads and trusting his team to play around it. At this point, Huni seems to be the weak link of the team, underperforming as of late. However, it could be painted down to his continuing adjustment to the new roster. There are high hopes for Echo Fox at this point, with a solid display shown in their first week with the new roster. They're currently tied for third, and hopefully they continue to display a good showing for the rest of the split. Our final story today will cover a new game mode currently on the PBE called Nexus Blitz. It features a custom map that supports 3 laners and 2 junglers in a 5v5 skirmish on a smaller battlefield. Also, it sports a shorter game time with just 15 minutes on average and 20 minutes as a maximum, providing action-packed games for those in a hurry. As for gameplay, there's 2 lanes and a jungle in half of the map. Both lanes fuse into one at the first tower, while the jungle is guarded by another tower that you really should avoid. Junglers both get experience points as long as they're near each other when they clear a camp, and camps are filled with more enemies than usual. Blue and red buff also spawn later, blue near the lane and red in the top of the jungle. Just like gold, both junglers get this buff. Rift Herald also gives both his trinket use to whoever picks it up and Baron buffs across your whole team. Laners have to split 2 to 1, but they don't seem to stay in them too long. They're separated by a single small bush, which is usually watered by both teams. Roams are easy since you can see both sides of the map on your screen. There won't be a lot of time to farm up, so the whole team gets gold when minions die, even if you weren't the one to last hit it. Instead of endlessly pushing towards one another and hoping to get kills, the game deploys random events for everyone to partake in. They're usually odes to other games, such as pushing a cart like in TF2 or Overwatch, a giant red circle to fight in Battle Royale style, King of the Hill, or an old-fashioned snowball battle. The winning team gets a random buff for a short duration. While these are the only random events we've seen since its deployment, there's sure to be more to come before it goes live on the public servers. On top of this, they've re-added some of the older items in League of Legends for players to use in this mode exclusively. These include Deathfire Grasp, Force of Nature, Wriggle's Lantern, and even lesser versions of Heart of Gold and Philosopher's Stone. Even if they aren't that viable in our opinion, it's interesting to see Riot listening to the community and adding them back into the game in some way. As expected, the game ends when enemies surrender, as early as 8 minutes or when the Nexus explodes. There's only 3 towers and an inhibitor that they have to get through, and some events help push that even faster. From what our riders have played, it's extremely fun and addictive thanks to the intense and quick gameplay. A much needed break from how slow some games can be in Summoner's Rift in today's meta. Since it's still in beta, there's no promise that everything will be pushed to the live version. However, we have a really good idea of what to expect when it releases. A fast-paced battle to test playstyles and teamwork in an ultimate nostalgia-filled battle. Unfortunately, that brings us to the end of this week's episode of the League Digest. If you guys like what we do and really want to help us out, we have a Patreon link in the description down below. It explains why we need it and why we have it and all the cool rewards that you might get if you support us over there. Lastly, don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook to keep up to date with everything that we're doing. Until next time, I'm Sushix with the League Digest, and I'll talk to you guys later.